I have for you is a word. Tenet. It'll open the right doors, some of the wrong ones too. Use it carefully.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Weekly Reel podcast. My name is Jeremy.
And my name is Ken.
We also are joined by a special guest today.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jacob. You probably have seen me here, or heard me here, sorry, on a previous episode. But I'm here once again to talk about a movie.
Oh, really? On a movie podcast.
My mind's blown.
Thanks, Jake. In this episode of the Weekly Reel, we're actually going to be talking about Tenet. And we actually watched this movie all together, the three of us. And we actually watched it in theaters. It wasn't through a streaming service and all that stuff. So how did it feel like watching in theaters again, Jake?
Well, for me, one thing that I have to say that I really liked about going to the theaters was the popcorn. We were able to get some movie popcorn. Obviously, they had safety guidelines in place so that, limited our contact. One thing was that there were no refills on the large popcorn. That one was sad. But one thing about this movie is it was very, very loud. And I don't know if I forgot how loud it was to watch movies in theaters or not, but man, everything was loud. Every little punch, every explosion just almost burst my eardrums. But also, it was really good to see a movie on that huge screen again, especially this time we watched the movie in XD. So that's like a bigger screen and bigger speakers, so that might have contributed to that. I was excited because I wanted to see I want to get the full movie experience, really take in all like the cinematic experiences that Nolan provides in his movies, whether it's from, what camera he used to film it or the way he frames his shots. I was just really excited to see all that on the big screen.
Dang, man, that's pretty crazy. Like, wait, was the popcorn too salty for you? Because I feel like it was a little salty for me.
I think there were some that were just coated in butter and then some that had no butter at all. So it was like really hit or miss on every single piece of popcorn.
Yeah, and the sound of the movie, I do have to agree with you, was really loud, especially just jumping into that opera scene in the very beginning. All of a sudden, when gunshots start flying, it's like, ooh, surprising.
And
you felt it, right?
Stomping on the cello. I heard that like in my heart.
How was it for you, Ken, going back to the theater?
It was nice. I mean, I think we may have mentioned it last week, but it was my first movie of the year. So it was nice breath of fresh air, despite what we were actually breathing that day. It was pretty bad air quality up in Napa last Friday. But man, everything that Jacob did say, I completely agree. It was just nice to be able to just kind of do just something a little bit normal, even though, obviously the guidelines, the social distancing guidelines, having to wear a mask. And then, man, the no refill kind of sucked. But I don't know if you guys noticed, but I feel like this theater experience was probably one of the cleanest experiences that I've ever had. It was kind of weird not walking through the movie theater and not having your shoes feel all sticky and like just being concerned of what you're sitting on, but not worrying about it because it was in the dark. But this was probably the cleanest movie going experience that I've had in quite some time, probably since Tan Fran and San Bruno opened brand new. So but yeah, completely agree with what Jacob said earlier.
Yeah, like because in our local theater, when we're walking in some of the theaters or some of theater rooms, you can hear like the stickiness of your shoes. Like, like, what
So gross.
That's
The
nasty,
crunch
bro.
of the
Who knows what they're
popcorn.
doing in those back seats, man? I don't know. Oh man, but I totally agree with you guys. Like the atmosphere of going back to the theater is something like unmatched. Just trying to watch like a movie back at home, just streaming, it's not the same because you're like everyone's walking around, especially if you have like a lot of family members in your household. They're just walking around, banging like doors, closing refrigerators, cooking food. It's not the same, right? It's like you feel totally immersed when you go into the movie theater. Everyone's there for the same goal, is to watch this movie. And I felt like it was a really good experience. Yeah, it was pretty loud and it did suck. No free refill on the popcorn. I mean, they could have just given us a second bucket, but I don't know.
I know. I mean, there were 5 of us, so it'd have been nice for them just to kind of honor that, even though there was a big fat sign that basically said that they were giving out free refills.
Yeah. Oh well. Who knows? Hopefully, we won't have to wait too long till our next movie experience.
So yeah, there was one last thing that I did want to mention, and I mean, it was kind of a negative, but it's only for me. It's like a personal preference of mine, especially within the last several years. Especially big releases like a Tenet film. I would normally try to go on opening night, and usually opening night is a more rowdy crowd. I'm one of those people that prefers a louder atmosphere. I know this is probably a polarizing topic. I know a lot of people would prefer a more quiet experience, but I think for me, that was the only thing that was kind of missing from for me watching Tenet in the theater. Just a more lively crowd. But I mean, that's just a nitpick for me.
That's true. Because since I was sitting between you guys, I felt okay. Because I felt your reactions next to me, but I didn't like. Obviously, we're all spaced out, so we didn't have anyone like in front of us or behind us. So it felt empty in a way. You can feel some reactions, but they felt far away. So in a way, that's good because of the obviously situation the world is in. But it's just something that we have to adapt with, at least for now.
Yeah, as Jim Carrey says, we'll take it.
For sure. So, here on the Weekly Reel, we actually do have a podcast ritual where we talk about one notable movie or TV show we watched in the last week. So, Ken, do you want to start us off with what you watched this last week?
Yeah, I'll go pretty quick. Actually, there are 2 things that I wanted to mention. One's not really a TV show or a movie. I've been watching a lot of Casey Neistat vlogs. Welcome back, Casey. He's come out with like 5 videos in the last 6 days, and it's kind of getting back to normal a little bit with the viewing habits, and so yeah, just kind of going back to watching his vlogs on YouTube. Anyway, to answer your question for real, I've been watching a lot of Christopher Nolan within the last week, basically starting with Tenet, and I wanted to highlight rewatching Dunkirk for the very second time. First time I watched it was in the theaters when it came out, and I hadn't seen it. I remember spending about half the movie trying to figure out what was going on because I wasn't paying attention in the beginning, and the very beginning is very, very important. And yeah, just the fact that I knew what was going on going into this rewatch, at least certain things. It was a better experience overall. It was nice seeing the usual Nolan actors like Cillian Murphy, Tom Hardy, and Tenet's own Kenneth Branagh. So I just thought it was a nice connection between that Dunkirk and Tenet. It was just nice just to sit through a nice war, just to see like a historical movie, especially since I was able to do a little bit of research beforehand instead of going in cold turkey before. But I think Dunkirk may be the most underrated Nolan film. So I don't know if you guys agree, but that might be the most underrated for me.
Wow. I would say Memento because no one really talks about it too much now. But I don't know. It could
True.
just be it just maybe just is. I don't know. But Dunkirk is definitely one that people haven't
Yeah.
seen much.
Yeah, I think with Memento, I think people do bring it up. It's just because, obviously he gained a lot of notoriety with Dark Knight and Inception, etc. But I mean, it gets brought up because it's his first.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. I do still need to watch Insomnia, I think is on HBO right now, and I still haven't seen that. Me and Ken still haven't watched Prestige, and we'll definitely watch that for an episode one of these days. But Jacob, what did you watch this last week?
Well, to go off what Ken was saying, I also watched Casey Neistat's vlogs. Been coming out daily for the past few days, so I'm excited for that. Just to see, his cinematic ways of vlogging. I think if that's how you. But also related to what Ken was saying too, I did watch Inception. I was after Tenet. I was in the mood for a mind-bending, time-bending movie that I was kind of searching for that feeling of not understanding what was going on, but I think in terms of Inception, I pretty much just fully understand, even though it's still pretty complicated in itself. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this past week.
Oh man, yeah, because I if you listen to last week's podcast, I actually did mention I watched Inception about 2 weeks ago, and man, it's still such a good movie.
Yeah.
But the movie I watched this past week was Seven with Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman.
Ooh, that's so good.
It was my first time watching it, actually, because I think after Tenet, I was thinking I kind of want like a dark movie with like some really like notable actors, and I was like, Seven sounds really good right now. And of course, I knew like the infamous line, "What's in the box?" Right? Like I knew that. Oh God, what's in the box? Like it, just that whole thing. I'm like, and I was a bit spoiled for that part. I don't want to mention what's actually in the box, just in case you guys want to check it out. But yeah, I actually really enjoyed the movie, and a lot of the cast. Got Brad Pitt, Morgan Freeman, and a bunch of other people too. I don't like that. I don't want to mention just in case for spoilers. But yeah, have you either of you guys watched Seven?
I have seen it, but not for a long time. I think when I watched it, I was still too young to understand it. But yeah, it was a while ago, and I remember just being really surprised, I guess, or shocked at a lot of the scenes in that movie, just because of how graphic they were, I guess.
Ooh, yeah. Yeah, I don't want to spoil anything, but there's a lot of crazy, brutal, torture, death scenes type stuff in there.
Yeah, I agree. Everything what you guys are saying, exactly the same. It's been a long time for me. I don't know about being too young or whatever, because I got some years on these young folk that I'm talking to right now. But I definitely watched it on DVD. So it's been a while for me. I might have to revisit that eventually also whenever I have a little bit of time. So
yeah,
we'll
I think I watched it on HBO Max. So if you want to check it out.
Perfect. Thanks for the tip.
HBO Max, yeah.
Still not sponsored.
Still not sponsored. We'll you come in contact with us. We gotta stop saying that, by the way, but I don't know. So we gotta stop giving them free sponsorship. We need to contact them.
I know, seriously. I'm gonna send out an email.
Yeah. But last week, we actually talked about part 2 of our MCU series, I guess. We talked about Thor, Captain America, the First Avengers, and The Avengers 2012. We actually had a poll running up on our social media, on our Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, I believe. And yeah, Ken, do you want to tell them what the poll was all about?
Yes, we decided to switch gears this week, and I feel like a lot of our polls were kind of like kind of on the masculine side. We kind of switched it up, and we got a little bit of a kind of like more something geared towards both guys and girls this week. And so this poll for this, it was basically phase 1 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It was who was your favorite couple, and the 3 choices were Thor and Jane Foster, Steve Rogers and Peggy Carter, and Tony Stark and Pepper Potts. And so, Jacob, if you had to vote, who would you have voted for, and why?
Well, I did vote on the Instagram story using
Oh,
that
you did?
slider. Yes, I did. But the couple that I chose was Tony and Pepper. And I think I chose them because you really see just throughout all of the MCU movies, but then especially in the beginning, you can see the relationship develop from him or her just being his assistant and helping him out whenever he needs it, to him actually realizing, like, the kind of person that she is, and just them developing that relationship over the course of multiple movies, I think really solidified my choice.
Oh, interesting. You actually, I guess, disagreed with both me and Jeremy. I think both me and Jeremy on the podcast last week, kind of a spoiler, but you could definitely check out the full episode on your favorite podcast app. We both ended up picking Steve Rogers and Peggy Carter. And so for the results, actually the majority of our listening audience agreed with Jacob at 67%. Yeah, 67% of the poll, the results, I should say, agreed with Jacob with Tony and Pepper.
Yeah, I feel like the Steve Rogers, what's her name?
Peggy Carter.
The Steve Rogers and Peggy Carter relationship is kind of overlooked. I should not necessarily overlooked, but it's like people don't really include that, I feel like, because it's like in one movie and then in the last movie. But I think like I agree with you guys where it's like, or it's really close between those two, because you can really tell how deep their love for each other is, but then at the same time, you barely see any of it throughout the movies.
That's true. I can see that. So yeah, if you wanted to participate in our polls, it is happening every Tuesday on our Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Weekly Reel. So this week we are talking about a movie that we watched last Friday. We watched Tenet, the Christopher Nolan movie. So this is a spoiler warning. I know we talked a little bit about it, but this is your spoiler warning for Tenet. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, go see it right now and tell us if you understood the movie. But Tenet, for just a quick synopsis, is through the invention of inversion, the protagonist will fight through time and space to prevent World War II. So that was the synopsis that I wrote down. But honestly, this movie was like so complicated and complex that I was like, did that even make sense? Was that enough? I don't know. But all of us had so many great moments of the movie when we were watching. I felt like reactions coming from Jacob, coming from Ken. So, Jacob, do you want to mention any of your favorite moments of Tenet?
Yeah, so I wrote down a few, but one of them definitely for me was when they were inverted and then traveled back to Oslo at the Freeport, and then they went through the turnstile again, and then in turn started to fight themselves, kind of. But it was only the protagonist who fought himself. I don't know. I think it was. I'll go into it a little bit later, but when that scene happens, I feel like for me it kind of brought the whole thing together. Because it's something that happened in the beginning where you didn't really understand what was going on, and then finally you see, oh, that's what happened.
So wait, quick question. Because I've just realized this now. Since the protagonist fought himself, how come he didn't face annihilation? Because, like, spoilers, I guess. If you were to touch your touch your other self in the inversion timeline, then you would die, right? Or something
Yeah.
like that. So when he fought himself, how come he didn't die?
I think I remember when he was being briefed by one of the people after he already found out what was going on, with the inversion thing, that if they have the special suit on, then it won't cause them, their atoms to touch each other, and then he annihilates himself. Because I think that's why they wear those special black suits that they were wearing, was so that if they did come into contact with each other, with themselves in the alternate or inverted timeline, that it wouldn't cause their atoms to come together. I think I remember someone mentioning something about that.
Yeah, I think you're probably right, because the protagonist was wearing that full black getup while Neil wasn't. So
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Another scene that I had, or moment that I had mentioned in my notes, was the final scene, which I think we're probably all going to have this on our list. But just seeing how the whole pincer movement idea played out, which was basically one team going forward in the mission, I guess, and then
red team,
another,
right?
yeah, the red team, and then another team moving backwards through time throughout the mission. So they kind of already know where everything's going to be, and they had everything planned out. I don't even know how their minds were able to wrap around that, but props to them for saving the world.
I know, seriously, it's so like complicated. How did they even like go inverted and like and then go forward again to like deliver the message to the other team about what happened? Because when you go inverted, you age. You're still aging forward.
Yeah.
So it's not like one of those time travel movies where you can go back to 1982 and then still be like the same age. Like you literally have to, when you travel back in time, you're still aging forward. So it's like, if you want to get back to 1982, you have to actually wait 30 years. Right. So I thought that was a clever way of limiting their time travel aspect.
Yeah.
I think that was pretty cool.
And
but
then I just have one more.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is probably one of the best moments in the movie, but it was towards the end when the protagonist was there to protect Kat, and he gets into this car to talk to Priya, and then shoots the person who was supposed to kill Kat. This is probably a huge spoiler. Just
it's all good, dude.
we gave the spoiler alert already. You're good.
This whole episode is spoilers.
That's true. So they're talking about loose ends, and then Priya thought, "Oh, my job is to take care of the loose ends." But then the protagonist, he says, "No, that's my job." And then she said something like, "What?" And then he goes, "I just realized you don't work for me." Oh, wait, no. He says, "I just realized I don't work for you. We both work for me." And I think like that got like the biggest reaction out of the crowd in the movie theaters. It was just confusing but funny, but also made sense at the same time.
You forgot how he ended that with,
"Oh yeah,
I am the protagonist." I was like, oh.
Oh man.
The way you said it was so good.
This is the perfect time to mention that Jacob didn't know who John David Washington's dad is.
I didn't. When I heard the news, I was shocked.
Yeah, because after the movie, we're like, John David Washington. You don't know who he is? And it's like, that's Denzel's son, Jacob.
I did not know that.
Jacob's mind was blown.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, his mind was blown right in front of his chicken nuggets.
Oh yeah,
at Chick-fil-A.
Delicious chicken nuggets.
Oh, that was so good.
So how about you, Ken? What's some of your favorite things of Tenet?
Well, the first one that I wanted to highlight was the fight choreography in the Oslo Freeport. Just the fact that I heard that they had to film that like so many times, but they had to film it going forward and inverted. With the whole complicated choreography. Obviously, John David Washington, the protagonist, just fighting himself or whatever, and so it was just pretty nuts. It looked kind of weird the first time we saw it, especially remember that one part where it looked like he was kind of possessed. The inverted version was kind of looking possessed.
Yeah.
I'm glad I wasn't the only one that thought that looked really weird. At least when we're kind of following inverted protagonist going backwards, when we revisited the Oslo Freeport, it looked normal. So I just thought the fight choreography was crazy. The second thing that I really, really enjoyed was the whole setup for the Tallinn job. Basically starting the freeway part. I think I even mentioned it to Jeremy like right then and there. I was like, oh, here we go. Because man, I was getting some Dark Knight vibes during that scene in The Dark Knight when they were trying to use Harvey Dent as bait, and with the vehicles and everything. And that was one of my favorite parts in The Dark Knight, and I just got that whole vibe because like the music was like kind of just getting you pumped up, and then just like some of the practical stunts that they were able to pull off, especially with large vehicles, and then to be able to kind of film the kind of the later part of that action sequence with cars like tumbling backwards. I still don't know how they filmed that. It's still like mind-blowing, and I kind of don't want to look it up just so that I can just believe it happened that way.
Speaking of action sequences, because I noticed like you mentioned the fight choreography. One fight that stood out was when the protagonist fought at the restaurant in the kitchen. Remember that?
Yeah, I remember that.
That was a good one. Because normally I've been kind of, I guess, nitpicky a little bit about Christopher Nolan's action, at least the hand-to-hand action sometimes could be hit or miss. Like sometimes you would get something like Inception in the rotating room. That's super cool. Then some other times you get kind of slower action or really choppy action sequences. So I feel like some of them in Tenet were like really good.
Yeah, definitely. And one last thing I wanted to quickly bring up, the score. The score for Tenet was just amazing. Ludwig Göransson, I hope I'm saying his name remotely correct. I thought it was pretty cool to be able to for Christopher Nolan to get him, just kind of him going on, just on the heels of Black Panther and The Mandalorian. And I don't know about you guys, but ever since we watched the movie, I've been listening to the Tenet soundtrack every day at work, and it's just, I don't know, it gets me hyped to actually do some work.
Yeah, dude, I've been listening to it too, man.
Yeah, it's so crazy. And if you guys have Spotify or Apple Music or whatever, definitely check it out, especially after you do watch the film. Well, what do you think of the music, Jacob?
I actually haven't really listened to it since the movie, which is, I don't know, I feel like I should have by now, but it's definitely something I need to do. But I mean, during the movie, definitely it was, it helped build what feelings Christopher Nolan wanted to give the viewers as they were watching, whether it was like an action scene or, a scene that's like building up to the final scene. Just, I knew during the movie that it was going to be good listening to it by itself, but I haven't gotten around to it yet.
If I had to make a recommendation, there is do you remember the scene where I think Sator, he goes to the blue-red room in Tallinn, I believe, that warehouse, and there's that song where he's walking through, I think it might be the blue side, I believe, when he's just entering that room, and there's like that music just going crazy. If you remember that scene, if I recommend watching or listening to the song Sator because it gets trippy, man. I'm like, ooh, this is kind of disturbing, actually.
Dang.
Actually, saw a quick YouTube video on that. I think what Ludwig Göransson did was he literally inverted the music, and that's probably what you're hearing.
Really?
Yeah, it's totally nuts.
Interesting.
You'll feel it, man. It feels weird.
Yeah, it's called Sator, just like Jeremy said.
Okay, definitely gotta listen to that and then do some research myself. That sounds interesting.
Yeah.
One of the moments I want to bring up, though, since I'm happy none of you talked about this yet, is when Kat kills Sator at the very end, like just out of passion. She's like, "I can't wait anymore. I need to kill him now," and just like kills him and then just the way I thought it was funny when she put down the sunscreen on the floor, and just when she pushes him off, you can hear the.
Oh man, that was brutal. Like the way he fell off and he hit his head on the, I was like, oh
yeah, the whole audience was like, oh. Just when that happened, I was like, because I didn't know that he was gonna hit the side of the boat first.
Yeah.
Just the way he hit the side and then splashed into the water. It's like, dang, that was a good moment.
Yeah, because I mean that guy, what was his name? Mihar, the guy from yesterday. He was basically wait for my signal, don't do anything, and yeah, like you said, she couldn't even wait.
Freaking crazy. My other best moment was I think just near the end when Neil, played by Robert Pattinson, when he reveals like that he was like working for the protagonist the whole time, and I when he started driving the truck, like when he went in through the turnstile and then he was going forward in the same timeline trying to kind of catch up with them in the truck, I'm like, I think that's when I realized it's like, shoot, he's the guy that's in front of the gate and that he dies. And I felt really sad after that, but just the end, I think it's almost like setting up a sequel.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had to die because he had to protect the protagonist because everyone was working for him.
That line is still the best, man.
Hey, going off what you said about the Neil scene, when the protagonist first flipped the body and saw that red string on his backpack, I don't even know, but I remembered seeing that on his backpack a lot earlier in the movie, and I think right then that's when I realized that it was Neil.
Yeah, I remember you telling me about that, and I need to go back and watch it, see if I can catch that again. And yeah, this is definitely a movie I need to rewatch on Blu-ray, 4K, whatever, with captions on. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that red tag. Well, Neil. I almost said that red tag guy. Neil. He actually saves the protagonist early on in Kiev.
True, at the opera.
At the opera, yeah.
Yeah, and he's wearing. Do you guys know where that little keychain thing came from?
I don't know where, but I know he was wearing it in the opera scene because you could see when he turns around, he's wearing the backpack that has that keychain on it.
Right. They didn't say.
Okay, just wondering if there was like an actual origin story for that little keychain. But since we talked about the Oslo scene a little bit and the Tallinn scene with the fire truck and all that stuff, do you guys actually have a preference on which one's better? And I know we went through those scenes twice, forward and inverted. Ken, do you know which one you actually prefer or like better?
Well, you know what? Inverted is fantastic because you get that feeling of like, oh, like it. I feel like for me, that's when I started getting the film. Like I was able to kind of put some stuff together. But that initial feeling of going through each of the setup, especially while they were trying to set up like what they needed to do at the Oslo Freeport, and them setting up like that Tallinn scene with just trying to steal the part of the algorithm. I think forward's still better for me, even though I understood it more kind of going back. So that's just me.
How about you, Jake?
So for me, I kind of alternated them. So for Oslo at the Freeport, I chose the reverse side or the inverted side because like I mentioned earlier, for me that like kind of brought the whole movie together because I just started to understand what was going on and how time was working in the movie. It was like my aha moment. Watching all that, just seeing how or thinking about how confused I was by what was going on when I watched that scene for the first time when they're going through it, in the forward timeline. Seeing everything play out in the inverted timeline was just satisfying to see. Oh, that's how that happened. That's how that happened. Then that's when I kind of started to understand how time worked in the movie. For the Tallinn part with the freeway, I chose the forward timeline because it was more for me. It was like more exciting. Like it's kind of like a heist thing where they're putting together all these little aspects of their mission to try and steal the one of the algorithms. So, and then also in the inverted timeline of Tallinn, I was still kind of confused about how everything was working and trying to understand still of the way that time worked. So yeah, that's what I thought about those two scenes.
You literally stole my thoughts. you incepted me, took it from my vault, and put it in yours. It's like, oh yeah, those are really good ideas, Jacob. Yeah, I feel the exact same way. Basically, with everything that you said, the Oslo inverted, Tallinn forward, just especially when in the Oslo Freeport, when the protagonist kind of like lays down in front of the plane engine, I think, to kind of like blast himself through, I guess that one door. I'm like, dang, that's pretty crazy, because I thought when they were going forward that whoever he was fighting died. Like when he slid under the thing, I thought he got eaten up by the engine. I guess not, because he's still alive. So, because that was a bit confusing. It made it look, the editing made it look like he flew through the door into the engine and then it exploded.
Yeah.
But apparently he just slid through. So
I think you were made to believe he was just a henchman.
yeah. I almost was thinking, what if he is the protagonist when he was fighting that guy for the very first time? But I was like looking at his arms coming through his sleeves. I'm like, oh, he's a little bit lighter skinned. So I'm like, maybe that's Robert Pattinson fighting him. Neil, but I guess it was him. So who knows? Maybe it was a stunt double or something that threw me off. But I know we've talked about like inverted, forward, and I know that gets pretty complicated, especially in Tenet. I know that some people have complained about that. So how do you guys feel about Nolan's complex storylines, and was Tenet actually too complicated for its own good? And do you have any thoughts on that, Jake?
Well, in terms of just, generally how Christopher Nolan makes his movies and the concept of his movies confusing, like I personally like that. Like I like watching a movie and, trying to not nitpick, but like look at every aspect of every scene, trying to figure out, why is that there? Like everything's there for a reason. That's the thing I like about Christopher Nolan, is that everything that he puts on screen is there for a reason. So, yeah. And then in terms of Tenet, I think it was definitely too complex at times. And there's some things that obviously I still don't understand, so I need to watch the movie again. But I think it was definitely complex, also in a time where, movie theaters are not as accessible as they are usually. So it's not as easily, or we can't just as easily go over to the movie theaters and watch it again, which I would have loved to have done if movie theaters close by were open, showing the movie. But yeah, I like Nolan films because they kind of make me confused.
Yeah, I
If that
agree
makes
to a
sense.
certain extent. Yeah.
I laugh because I understood that. Well, for me, I love it. I love his complex storylines because I don't think Jacob mentioned it, but I think that's Christopher Nolan pushing the boundaries of what can be done in the film industry. Just the way he has played with time. It just pretty much in most, if not all of his films, especially obviously Tenet, just kind of going forwards and backwards, just kind of going in a loop, going in and around a loop. I love the fact that he is not afraid to, just experiment and just try different things because you know what? That's how the movie industry gets better. They can see what a guy like Christopher Nolan is doing, and it'll inspire them to try to create some original content. And like it or not, especially in 2020, I feel like a lot of the big like big budget films that we normally would be going to are mainly sequels, so for Christopher Nolan to push the boundaries on original content is amazing. As for Tenet being too complicated, I liked it just because it just makes me want to. I mean, I totally didn't get it the first time. I had to, just try to watch some YouTube videos to try to understand it. But um, if a film like that doesn't make you think, then I think there's something missing, And again, I go back to him pushing the boundaries, and so I didn't mind the complicatedness. I don't know if that's a word. I didn't mind that at all because it made me want to rewatch it, and it's all about the theater watching experience anyway. And if you don't get it all like the first time, you know what? Watch it again.
Yeah, at least it was pretty pleasurable to watch, at least for the most part, I think. In my opinion, I do also like how complex his movies are. I think the perfect sweet spot for me was Inception, on how like crazy it can get and mix with his epicness of his story. Um, but and I also do like, that I would have to like do a little, at least a little bit of research after the movie. Like there are like some of these hanging questions just that you need to clarify. I love researching that after the movie. Yeah, going on Reddit and seeing all like different comments and posts on there and all that stuff. I like doing that. Honestly, for me, going into Tenet, however, or at least after watching Tenet, I feel like it was actually maybe a little bit too complicated for its own good. I think it crossed that line very slightly, just by a hair for me. Just maybe it was because of the sound mixing that I couldn't understand anything that they were saying, either because of like their really heavy accent, or the music or was too loud, or the sound effects were too loud. I don't know.
Masks.
But yeah, or they were wearing like oxygen masks. It's like, hey guys, can you give me what I'm doing? It's like, I don't know. Like sometimes I don't know if that made it more complicated and a lot more hard to follow. But honestly, yeah, for me, I enjoyed it, but it was maybe a little bit too complicated to be like fully like it was. Sometimes it was a bit of a chore to follow sometimes.
I could see that.
But so Tenet is obviously, like any film, it's not perfect, right? So do you guys have any nitpicks, any worst moments that you didn't like about the movie? Jake, do you want to go first?
Yeah, so I think first thing, something that you mentioned is how hard or difficult it was to understand what people were saying at times. And I think I read somewhere that Christopher Nolan did that on purpose. So I mean, I don't know why. I don't know what purpose that serves. Maybe just makes it more difficult to understand the movie, which I guess is what he wanted. But that combined with, I thought they talked pretty fast during the movie, like between, especially if it was between two different people who were talking. They would just start talking right after the other one was finished. Like I'm still trying to process what one person said and go back in my head, think about what they actually said because of how muffled their voices sounded. But yeah, so definitely the audio. And then one part that I thought was not worse, but I guess it's a nitpick, is how quickly the protagonist understood the concept of inverting time. It was like everything that was mentioned to him, for whether it be from like the scientist or from heads of the organization, it just seemed like he got it right away. And I thought that maybe, him kind of trying to figure that out would also be in the same time that we would be trying to figure it out as viewers. But I mean, he got it really fast, and I think that also made it pretty difficult and complex in terms of, the concept of inverting time and how everything would work. The last thing, which this isn't really a bad thing, but every scene was important. Like every single word that everybody said was important to the story. And that was hard for me because I really had to pee like after the first 30 minutes of the movie. And I kept asking myself, wait, is this a good time to go? And as I was about to go, people started talking. I was like, oh, this is probably important. So, but I mean, yeah, that's it. That's all my nitpicks for Tenet.
Yeah, like when every word is so important, I feel like the audio is like even more crucial. I think during the movie, we didn't even know Sator's name. I was like, oh, Saito, right? Saito from Inception. That's his name.
I thought it was Sartor from Ragnarok. Or
Sartor.
I honestly don't even remember hearing his name at all. It was.
Oh man, I thought I was going crazy during that one scene in the Tallinn.
That was rough.
I was like, oh, is it because they're in like maybe some like sealed area? But no, he was talking backwards.
Yeah, he was talking backwards, and it's like, and then it would come through the radio, which is super staticky, through like a little walkie-talkie that's like taped to the wall. I'm like, bro, at least turn up the audio on that walkie-talkie. I felt like I was having a stroke with trying to listen to him.
Yeah. Some of my nitpicks. I'll mention it. Was sound mixing was definitely at the top of the list for me. I mean, for me, I still like the loud music. I like the pump, chest pumping. You just feel the bass in your chest. I do like all that, but I felt like like for the sound mixing, the dialogue is where, man, I just felt lost. And it definitely contributed to me being lost for the first hour, at least, maybe, until like stuff was starting to kind of come back and come together for me. And so that's a huge one for me. Agree completely with what Jacob mentioned earlier. A new one that I kind of wanted to mention is that, do you guys remember that one dude, Ives? He was
Aaron Taylor Johnson. If you guys didn't know, he played Quicksilver in Age of Ultron, and he was Kick-Ass.
Oh, man, my mind's just being blown right now.
Yeah, Ives.
Yeah, I felt
Ives?
He had the beard. He was like one of the last three at the end.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, and you know what? You would think that him being one of the last three at the end, and him being, ending up with 1/3 of the algorithm, he'd be like important or whatever. But I felt like we didn't really know too much about Ives. They didn't spend too much time developing his character, which I feel like they could have a little bit more. And because I mean, I did like Ives, and at the end, again, spoiler warning. I was like, oh, is he double crossing both Neil and the protagonist? And then obviously he didn't, but it just that, you know, little bit like you don't really know where he's from. I don't know if they're you know what, if they would set up a Tenet based like Netflix show or whatever, I could see them doing that with Ives being like the main guy. I think he was that good. I like his screen presence overall. I just felt like he was kind of wasted in a way, because they didn't really develop him.
Yeah, I remember when they announced that Aaron Taylor Johnson was going to be in the movie, and then he shows up like halfway in the movie. I'm like, oh shoot, I forgot this guy was in this movie.
But yeah, I did like him as a character. He deserved more screen time, in my opinion. And the last very, very nitpick, it's very unrealistic, but I thought it would have been pretty cool if Tenet came out on February 2nd of 2020, because that's the last palindrome day that we're going to get for a very long time. And I thought it would have been pretty sweet. I looked on what day February 2nd fell on this year. It would have fell on it fell on a Sunday, so a movie definitely wouldn't have opened on that day, but it would have been pretty cool to watch it on 2/2/20. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah, because it was supposed to come out originally in July, right?
Yeah, but that was just my unrealistic nitpick. Come on, Christopher Nolan.
Tell the future, Christopher Nolan.
He's slacking.
You slacking. Come on.
Use your power and then inversion and go back in time, prevent COVID from happening. Just send.
Oh, I know that, because that would have been pre-COVID too.
Just send Denzel
Instead of his son.
You would have had to kill Denzel's dad for the grandfather paradox.
Dang.
How about you, Jeremy, with your nitpicks?
Well, you guys mentioned a lot about like the sound mixing and stuff. I totally agree that sometimes you just can't hear what they're saying. And Jacob did mention that every scene is important in the movie. And that's obviously, you want that in every movie, that every detail of the movie is for the sake of the story, for the sake of the movie, for making it better. And that's great. But one of my nitpicks is that there's a lot of sitting and talking at the dinner table type stuff, like the way they would deliver their exposition. I think like one good example would be when the protagonist talks to Michael Caine. They're literally having lunch together, and just them talking back and forth across from the table got kind of boring to a point, because it happened quite a few times. There was with like Kat and the protagonist, I think Sator and the protagonist at one point. And it gets kind of boring in a way. And Christopher Nolan, I think, is pretty good at exposition most of the time. I think like in Inception, when Cobb and Ariadne, or when Cobb's like explaining how everything works, they're literally in a dream and they're testing out all this crazy stuff. And I thought that was like, you interject your exposition into basically a really cool, interesting way of the scene. But in Tenet, it was kind of like they're just sitting there talking, and I found that kind of boring sometimes, and just not being able to hear them made it kind of worse.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's just like a nitpick, I guess. But I think that was probably the biggest negative I had of Tenet.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, there was, a lot of the dialogue scenes, now that I think about it, were in front of, they were just sitting at a table. Even when the protagonist met Sator for the first time was at a birthday, but everyone was just sitting at the table. It was weird.
Yeah, like you mentioned, in Inception, just the way they were able to kind of alternate really quickly between a dialogue scene and an action scene. Like for example, when Cobb had to go see Eames, which is played by Tom Hardy. Right after that, they talked for a little bit, and then right after that, it transitioned to like a chase scene. So you kind of got that excitement right after they talked. And then also one thing in terms of like all the dialogue. I feel like there was a lot of back-to-back dialogue scenes where there was just like no action or no time for you to take in and absorb what they said. So, for me, that I think that was also one of the difficult parts of understanding how complex the movie was.
Yeah, I definitely remember that. I got kind of tired watching the movie because it really doesn't give you time to breathe. There's
Mhm.
like no establishing shots. I feel like they cut a lot of those out probably for the sake of time. But yeah, so I felt a little bit tired because of that. But overall, uh, did Tenet meet your guys' expectations?
For me, it did. It was also one of the big things about it was it being one of the first big movie to come out in theaters in a long time. So just having that, what was it, 6 or 7 month break of not seeing a movie in theaters, having this one, the first one to watch, I think was special because it just it really made me understand how much I love the movie going experience. Um, in terms of understanding the movie, I kind of went into it not or expecting not to really understand it, but I expected to be amazed by the concept of how complex the movie was and how good the cinematics would be. And for me, like that I wasn't disappointed, according to those points.
Yeah, for me, I had like three expectations going in. I mean, it helped that. Well, first of all, I didn't really have expectations in terms of like, oh, I'm gonna expect this to be on Inception's like tier, I should say. So because I mean, I think it helped that I didn't really watch I hadn't watched the trailer in months before that. I only saw the first trailer, never saw there was a second one, right?
Yeah, there was definitely a second one.
Yeah, so I didn't watch that. So it kind of went in with tempered expectations, but in terms of specifics, I kind of expected that, kind of like watching Inception for the first time, where I wasn't going to be able to understand everything. So that definitely checked that box right there. I had a feeling that Tenet going forward and backwards from the first trailer, that time was this going to be a central theme, and like every other Christopher Nolan film, and it definitely was. And just the fact that it got me thinking a lot after the film, it definitely did for sure. So those are the three specific expectations that I had going into the film, and definitely check all the boxes for me. So how about you, Jeremy?
For me, going into the movie, I knew that there was some sound mixing problems, so I tried to make sure that when I was watching the movie, I was really paying attention, either to like their lip flaps and just their mouth movements. But I still sometimes couldn't, especially with Kenneth Branagh. I was like, dude, why are your lips so like straight? I'm like, I can't understand what you're saying. And that was one of my expectations going in. I kind of knew going in that there wasn't too much characterization going on. I was kind of disappointed in that as well. That there wasn't too much backstory, because I know that there's this huge. I expected like this huge spectacle of a movie where you're like globe trotting, and they definitely were in this movie. But the characters of like the protagonist, I don't think match up in terms of like my sympathetic nature compared to like Cobb of Inception. I didn't really feel like the feels when stuff was like going wrong and all this epic stuff was happening. It sometimes it felt a little bit hollow for me, but I did really still enjoy like I said, the spectacle and epicness of it. I did like it probably more than Dunkirk if I had to compare to his last movie. Very two different movies though, but I did I do feel like Tenet is more my style of the movie, more of my style of movie, just because of its genre. I think piques my interest a bit more with the whole sci-fi aspect of it. So one of my expectations, I actually also maybe have seen the Rotten Tomatoes score, and I know we usually do the guess the Rotten Tomatoes score segment, and I do want to mention that me and Ken are tied up 6-6 from last week. We are fully tied up. That was a really good competition game last week, and we're all tied up. When I was trying to consider whether or not we should score this episode for Tenet, I feel like it would be a bit unfair because I do kind of know like the ballpark of Tenet. I think it just happened, man. I'm sorry.
Man, why are you ruining like my favorite part of the podcast, bro?
Just yeah, sorry, man. It's just like when I was ordering tickets, I hate that sometimes. Like Fandango has like you're ordering tickets and then they have Tenet, blah blah percentage. It's like, oh,
I know. I hate it. I hate it when it's just like right there. But luckily, Jacob's with us, so we'll play for bragging rights here.
Yeah, so we're not officially gonna score it, but at least we can play the game for fun.
Yeah.
So
especially since Jacob's here.
Yeah, Jacob gets to play for fun.
Yeah.
All right, Jacob. Do you want to take your guess on what Tenet is on Rotten Tomatoes?
Yeah. Honestly, I like know the ballpark score as well because I saw it. But if I had to score this based on like, just like how I enjoyed the movie and how I feel like critics would rate it, I would say that it's an 87%.
Interesting. Well, for me, I did not see anything remotely Rotten Tomatoes related, but I almost did last week while I was actually searching for when I was actually looking up the scores for each of the 3 films that we covered in the MCU, Jeremy. I almost did because I forgot that on the Rotten Tomatoes home page, they will have current movies on there. And luckily, I noticed it and I literally blocked it with my hand so I wouldn't be spoiled. Anyway, I was really close with Jacob's guess. I guessed 88.
Ooh.
Dang, dude. All right, I'm gonna look it up because I actually just looked it up right now, and I was my guess was gonna be 80. So I just looked it up right now, and Tenet is 73% on Rotten
Really?
Tomatoes.
Yep.
Oh man, interesting.
So it's much lower than your guys' guess.
Mhm. I need to read some of those reviews and see, their reasoning for rating it that low.
That's because they couldn't get it.
I know, exactly.
It's basically like Fight Club. I didn't get that score either.
Oh, dude, Fight Club was. Can you even guess? Jacob, guess what Fight Club got. Just throw out a number from what you know.
75%.
Oh, dang, Jacob would have. Jacob would have won for sure.
Yeah,
it was like a
would've-
78 or something.
Yeah,
Oh, what did-
it was
what
in the
did you
70s for sure.
What did you guys guess again? I forgot.
Like 90.
Let me look at my notes actually.
We guessed really high just because when you think of Fight Club, it's like, oh, everyone likes that movie, right? It's like let's guess really high. But yeah, it's like 78 or something. So you would have won that round for sure.
by a mile, I guess 94. Holy. Oh, that I would have been way off.
But yeah, so guys, if you agree with the Rotten Tomatoes score, let us know because our audience question of the day is how did you feel about Tenet? So if you guys want to reach out to us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, you can search us up at Weekly Reel. Or if you want to email us, what's our email again, Ken?
Well, since you haven't learned it yet, it is weeklyreelpod@gmail.com.
Yeah, and for sure, if you enjoyed Tenet, if you hated Tenet, please let us know either in the comments, in your email, in your tweet. Let us know. What are we gonna watch for next week, Ken?
Well, for next week, we are making our first visit into the stylized world of Quentin Tarantino in the 1994 classic Pulp Fiction. I know Jeremy still hasn't seen it. Jacob, actually, have you seen it?
I actually have not seen Pulp Fiction.
Oh, interesting. You might have to watch that before, sometimes this weekend before we release that episode. But yeah, we might have a brand new guest that day, so we're still working that out. So you're gonna have to stay tuned to see if we get that guest.
All right, cool. I'm definitely looking forward to Pulp Fiction. It was like one of those movies I'm like, do I feel like watching it? I'm like, okay, it's a Tarantino movie, and I've heard some things about some scenes. I'm like, I don't know if I feel like some gruesome stuff right now. So, but I am definitely feeling it now for some reason. And I guess that's a good thing because we're going to be talking about it next week. Hopefully we can get a guest for next week. Hopefully we can confirm that. And so, yeah, I'm super excited for arguably people's favorite Tarantino movie.
Yes, it's definitely up there for most. It's top 1 or 2 really on a lot of people's lists for Tarantino fans for sure.
So yeah, if you want to catch Jacob on the social medias, where can they find you, Jacob?
Well, for me, Twitter, Instagram, at FashowJ. I think there'll be you can get the spelling down in the description. Also, I stream on Twitch, play some video games. It's gonna be at FashowJ_. That'll also be in the description. Yeah, that's pretty much it for me.
Well, for me, if you want to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and all that stuff, it's at JP_Flicks, actually. And if you want to subscribe to my YouTube channel, just search up my name, Jeremy Pullen Barrett. Trying to keep up with some reviews over there. How about you, Ken?
You can also find me on Twitter and Instagram at FreeKenA. That's free_Ken_A. And the spelling also will be in the episode description.
Well, it was a fun time, guys. Dude, Tenet was super complicated. I feel like we didn't even talk about a lot of stuff. And we talked about a lot of things. But this movie is definitely worth a rewatch on how complicated it is.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad we didn't take the complicated route because, I mean, our audience will be will be confused already. So I don't think we need to compound that by coming up with and talking like complicated concepts. So I think we did this the right way.
Yeah, if we were trying to break down Tenet, it would take like 5 hours. So it would have been crazy.
Yeah, it would be its own season.
What if we reversed the protagonist's name? Who? I don't know. That would be crazy. But anyway, guys, I had a really fun time. Stay tuned in for next week's episode on Pulp Fiction. And yeah, we'll see you next week on The Real.